I am so thankful that you very busy educators are taking probably your lunch break, if I know you, to join us for this session and share what you know about play. So, for those of you who just came in, welcome to Bowbend Consulting's Power of Play. We're so glad you've joined us for this 30-minute session. And I'm recording this so that if you miss it or have to log off, we'll be able to share it with you. And we're going to get started. I'm going to share my screen and then I'll just kind of ask you guys some questions. Maybe we'll share some anecdotes. As I was researching this, I loved learning about how play and the brain are so connected. Can y'all see my screen okay? Is that big enough? Okay, great. Awesome. So without further ado, let's get going. The power of play with Lee and Melissa. We're so glad y'all are here. Why don't y'all introduce yourselves now? I love this picture that y'all put in. You're so funny. Why don't y'all introduce yourselves to our guests and tell us a little bit about, you told us a little bit about how you got into play, but who are you? Where do you teach? And, then we'll get going.
So I am Lee Steele. I am a fourth grade teacher at Westminster. I have been teaching for about 16 years, with half of those being in second grade and half in fourth grade. And I have two kids of my own, a second grade little boy and an almost middle school girl.
So I'm Melissa Williams. I've taught for 15 years. I taught for, the public sector. I've taught in fifth grade, second grade, fourth grade, and now I'm in pre-first. I was at a school in Jacksonville called the Bull School, very similar to Westminster in that area. Moved here about 7 years ago. And I've been teaching at Westminster for the last 6 years in pre-first. I also have 3 children. But I have a 20-year-old, an 18-year-old, and a 17-year-old. One is going to college next year. I have one already in college, and then I have a junior. So, like I said, these teenage years just let me value this idea of these littles, and like you were saying, the impact this has on the brain, and these practices that they are, and these challenges and these choices that they're making. All are intertwined with this idea and concept of play.
And look, there's a picture of us at our international play conference in Scotland this summer, and we're playing. We had a little too much fun, I think.
I love that y'all taught me that there were so many like play conferences and play organizations all across the world, which I had no idea about, which just kind of gives credence. Like some people would say, play is just, something kids do. But really, people have been studying play for a long time, and there's a lot to learn about that. So without further ado, speaking of learning, this is something that I just thought was so interesting. So for those of you who are like kind of brain nerds like me, one thing that I love learning about right now, especially, is the brain and how brains develop and how they grow. And the neuroplasticity of the brain is just so incredible. And I just dumped a bunch of research on this screen, but ultimately, in summary, the only thing I wanted to say before I let the experts weigh in is this. One thing I learned was that literally play really has a positive impact on the formation of what's going on in your frontal lobe, which is, the center of the things we want our children to do, right? Their decision making, their executive function, their judgment, their long-term memory. And they can measure what happens in your brain as it's developing when you're doing play. And I just thought that was so cool. It's like, wow, you go to school to like make your brain smarter, but really you can also do it by play. So tell me what a little bit y'all know about play in the brain, and have y'all learned anything about just the power of it for education?
Yeah, and when we're talking about play, there are a few different types of play. Free play specifically is really fantastic for that brain development. Free play helps develop that reticular system that has to do with processing and integrating sensory information. It's great at developing your strength in your eyes. So the more you have that play, And that free play, especially outside, the less likely you are to develop vision problems. It makes you better problem solvers. It makes you more creative, makes you more willing to take risks.
And the one thing I want to mention is, like, when we talk to our kids about play and we ask them, are you able to play? Like, what is your form of play? And a lot of the kids will say, well, I'm in sports, or I play piano, or I play something. Basically what they're saying is, I play something very structured, right? And it has rules, and there's somebody telling me what to do, or there's a way in which to play the game. And so those are fine, and those are a form of play, and those are great. I'm not saying my kids were in organized sports. I agree with all the things that it teaches them. But one outlet that I think a lot of children don't get the opportunity to experience, oftentimes because of their rigorous schedule or because of their, just the way that we work, is the idea of freedom to choose what to play. And there are times on the playground, even at 5 and 6 years old, where we're like, guys, go play. And we're like, they'll say to us, go play what? Like, they don't know what to play because they haven't been given that opportunity just to figure it out. And so I think we kind of have to allow them that time and space, because this is where all of this kind of interaction with the brain and synapses and all of this stuff starts to take place, to allow it to grow and foster figuring it out. And if we always give them a game to play or something specific to do, then this kind of idea of free play, which allows all this amazing, interaction in the brain to happen, just doesn't.
And interestingly, I was reading about a study between organized sports and just free play. So like a pickup game, I'm not good with sports in general, but like a pickup game of baseball as compared to an organized game of baseball. And those pickup games actually help make those connections in the brain a lot more than the organized game, because the kids are working through problems like, who's going to play what position? How long are we going to play? Like, what rules are we going to use for our game? So again, like, organized sports are great, but having that balance to expose your child and access those different parts of the brain is really important.
So what y'all are saying is that as a parent, when I'm lazy and I'm like, I really don't want to sign you up for one more sport, it's great for me to kick them out of the house and say, go find somebody to play with. And that's actually maybe doing something better for their brain development than signing them up for a second sport during the spring.
For sure. And not only, I've been reading this book.
I don't know.
You're not going to be able to see it. It's called Balanced and Barefoot by Angela Hanscom.
Okay, I'm putting it in the chat.
You what?
She's gonna put it in the chat.
I'll put it in the chat for everybody.
Oh, great. And I was walking with my second grade son recently, and as we were walking, he was like, oh my gosh, I'm getting so tired. And I was like, buddy, you know what? I was just reading this book, and in the book, it says that kids now are a lot weaker than kids when I was growing up, because they're not engaging in that free play. Their bodies are very trained for specific things. And so, of course, it became a challenge. And of course, he proved to me that he is strong enough to complete the walk. But just when we think about how many different parts of our development play impacts and helps grow, it's pretty amazing.
True. And I would just, to add to that, there was a lady that was at the conference who was specialized in this idea of, the structural part of the body, and how many kids who are, 3, 4s, and 5s, you'll see them in casts, you'll see them and, they've broken or fractured or whatever. And it's because, like, they don't know how to fall, right? We give them so many things to prevent falling. We're like the lawnmower parent that goes before them and weeds everything out so that they're actually, everything is nice and flat and everything. And I'm not saying go out and, throw your kid on the floor or have, obstacles in front of them, but they don't climb trees anymore. Cause we're like, get down, you're going to get hurt. They don't know how to jump over fences, things like that. They don't have places to play where we're like encouraging that. And we are so blessed to have a playground that encourages the climbing and fosters the high peaks and things like that. And kids want to go up there. And so we kind of have to sit back a little bit and say, what's the worst that could happen? And if it's just to fall on the ground, kind of thing. But we've got to let that happen, because like we're saying, they are weaker, their bones are weaker, everything's weak, and they don't know how to fall. They don't know how to, put your hands out, put your legs out. This is coming from somebody who fell off a horse this summer, and I tried to tuck and roll and I broke my shoulder, but I knew how to tuck and roll, and I didn't crack my head, and I didn't have any other injuries. So these are the kinds of things we got to let kids do so that they can get stronger and better and just know their bodies and just have that core control, aside from the brain activity, just your strength.
Yeah. So yeah, it's, a lot of the research, again, looking at the motor skills, both gross motor and fine motor, social skills. We talked a little bit about executive function, all that creativity, resilience, long-term memory. Tell us a little bit, just give us a short snapshot into how y'all use play in your classrooms. And then we'll start to talk to parents about, okay, what can I do as a parent to help foster some of this? But tell us a little bit about your classrooms and how y'all foster that unstructured play.
So, I can start. I teach fourth grade. So a lot of times you think like play is more for like the itty bitties. It You might see that it lends itself a little bit more to those classroom environments. But what we found is it's just important for older kids. It can be really challenging to sit and focus for a long period of time. Our bodies are made to move. We need that stimulation. So in our classroom, we have a few times where play is incorporated in, like free play mornings. We have Tinker Thursdays, but something that we love to do is take advantage of big chunks of time that we have to sometimes say, okay, we're going to get out of the direct instruction and we're going to move outside. So recently we had Forest Friday, where we took our learning outside. We found a place. We have this fantastic nature trail, and we found a place on the trail where kids could just explore. And as teachers, we had to step back a little bit and we had to say, you know what, this is a relatively safe environment. We know that our kids are very capable and we're going to let them take some risks. So there was a small ravine and at first the kids were like trying to think about how they could walk around it, how they could navigate that. And then you had a few kids who were clearly, pros at playing outside, and they started jumping across. And we had some like more hesitant kids in the back who were like, oh, I don't know, I might fall, I might get wet, I might get a little bit muddy. But as more kids started attempting this, and some kids would fall and they would slip down a little ways, and then other kids would help them back up and they would maybe tackle it from a different angle. Some of those kids who were a little bit scared at first started doing it. And by the end, every single kid was jumping across. We had a kid blowing a whistle to indicate that it was safe for the next person to go. She was like a play director. We had other kids who were finding ramps so that they could make it a little bit more risky. We had other kids who were really the ones who, when kids jumped across, they would catch them. They wanted to make sure that everyone was safe. So it was this amazing opportunity for kids to be risky in a safe environment, which amazingly really transfers to learning, because kids who are so nervous to take risks and be wrong and make mistakes and sometimes fall in an academic environment see that sometimes risks are great to take, and sometimes you just have to do it. You just have to jump. And if you jump, you'll realize that it's actually something that you can do and you can be successful. Might be a few falls along the way, but you can get there. So play, even if it's not directly related to academics or what you're doing in the classroom, very much develop our learners.
And
Man,
I love to, and that's awesome. I was just gonna say, I love how, well, first of all, metaphor for life, right? But at the same time, maybe some of the kids who are leaders in the classroom, like of your mathematics or your English language, whatever, maybe they're not the leaders outside, and it gives
Right.
other people a chance to show that leaders can look different depending on your environment, and trust, can be built in those areas where maybe in the classroom that feels kind of icky or sometimes can be uncomfortable. So I think in pre-first, we try to do the same thing. We try to create environments in which there's risk, right? And that's, I mean, that playground outside, like we talk about, has it, like one kid was like, do you mind if I ride down the railing? And I'm like, well, there's a risk there. And he's like, well, I could fall off or I could have a really good time. And I was like, well, as long as you know, right? I'm right here, but it's a risk. So kids that's the want in them. They want to, but they're afraid to sometimes. And I think giving them those opportunities to know I'm here, and you can watch others and develop the trust and trust each other. So in pre-first, we try to create those environments too, where we have 3 opportunities to play throughout the day, in the morning, in the right before lunch, and in the afternoons. We try to get out for recess at least 3 times a day because, like Lee said, we value the wiggles, and that's part of it. But at the same time, we try to go in different atmospheres. So there's an open field down there at the bottom of Kent where we go down and it's just open. And when we said, let's just go play, and the kids are like, there's some kids that just stand there. But then there's other kids who's like, I see a dragon, there's a hidden treasure. Now you're like Imagineers come into play, and that's your imaginative play. And those are your dreamers, so we got to get them in there too. And people just value their imagination because it makes life more fun. And some people forget that they have one. Even in 5 and 6, we have some kids who are like, have to rediscover their imagination. So I think aside from the purposeful play and the playful practice that we obviously do in the classroom with games and within our teaching practices, it's important that we allow outlets for them to have the freedom to play as well. So we try to get it in there, but also we need parents and advocates saying, we're going to try to get this in too. And we're trying to talk to our middle school and high school friends, to come on and just get involved because teenagers need it. I know if you came to the pause meeting that we did this, Whitney outlined that the opposite of play is depression. And so that's the last place we want any kid to ever fall. And we know it's happening. We know kids feel that. So how do we advocate for kids, right? Whatever age they are, we got to get teachers involved in allowing them this outlet of play.
I think what's amazing though is that as parents, providing your kids opportunities to play is one of the easiest things you can do. It doesn't require planning. It doesn't require money. It doesn't require structure. It
Or
really,
you. It doesn't require
right.
you.
No,
You step back and your kid says, I'm bored. Oh, well, like, figure it out. Figure it out. Some of the best things in life have been created because people have been bored.
Yeah. It's so funny as y'all were talking about your classrooms and the different ways that y'all use play. I think that's so cool. I'm so lucky my kids go to school with y'all. But B, everything you said, right? It's the motor function, it's the creativity, it's the problem solving. And really, as a parent, I'm thinking, okay, I feel overwhelmed. I've got a lot on my plate. I'm so happy to step back and let my child go play. Obviously when I listened to y'all's session at the pause, these were some of the ideas that y'all came up with and shared with our parent body. But I'm super curious, what would you tell parents who are like, I don't have space, where, when, how do I make this happen? We don't have anybody in our neighborhood for them to play with. What do y'all have some ideas for parents of easy sort of wins where they can tell their kids to go play and it will be something successful?
I do think that a lot of people feel the pressure of like the ask schedule comes out and they've got to lock in those fun activities. And it is fun for them to do those things. But I think first and foremost, you just got to look at your life and kind of, if you use play as a priority, just as you do your health, just as you do dinner every night, and you prioritize it in ways, even if it's just an unstructured 20 minutes of, hey, I just want you to go play. In the beginning, your child, if they've never experienced this like space of time, they're not going to know what to do. But I guarantee you they'll figure it out, because otherwise no kid's just going to sit there, right? They're going to want to do something. And then you peek back in and they're going to start, creating characters, or start, cutting something out or making something out of boxes, right? Things are just going to start to happen. So I say start small, but start with just looking at your life. And if you prioritize maybe just one day, and then it becomes two, or maybe just a section of the weekend, because I know we have lots of working parents, we're them too. Just try to find a space of time where you can say, in this moment, I'm gonna try this out. Because for a lot of us, type A's, whatever you want to call people that, like a schedule and like every moment defined by something specific, it's going to take some practice. But if you are understanding the research, this is so needed. And it's for mental health. It's for, really your child and being their best self. So if you understood that, and you understand that by reading the research, you would definitely value this and prioritize it. Like I said, just like you would your health, if your child wasn't feeling good, or just like you do dinner, it will become, the invisible thread of your life. And parents need to prioritize play in their own. When was the last time that you could say, I had a moment, define play, right? A moment of time where your freedom to just do what you wish to do, and you find enjoyment in it. When was the last time you had it, even if it was just for a moment? And I think a lot of parents say, it's been a while, right?
So there's this game that I actually play at home. You were saying, what if you don't have a huge backyard or space? My game is when I open an Amazon package, instead of me crushing the boxes, I just throw them in a pile in the foyer, and I wait to see how long it's going to take my husband to deal with the boxes. That's the game that I play. But it actually, like, the boxes will sit there for maybe a day, and then slowly a few boxes will disappear. And I realize it's because the kids are getting them and they're doing things with them, whether it's pulling each other across the dining room floor, or they've taken them upstairs and they're creating some kind of forts. My second grader, we have those, you can buy these little tools on Amazon, and they're like safe cardboard tools where you can easily cut through cardboard and whatever. But he had taken all of these boxes and he was like hoarding them in our playroom. And I tried not to ask questions about it, but it turns out that he had this vision and he wanted to create this play structure. And it wasn't driven by us. The only thing it took from me was patience and trusting that he had a process that maybe I wasn't aware of. But just things as simple as that, of like just letting them explore the space, and sometimes being okay with a mess. That's sometimes all that they need.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Will one of y'all throw in the chat the cardboard tools? Because man, we've got X-Acto knives, and I'm like, all right, my level of risk is not like, that's just above my risk threshold for my 5-year-old. Maybe not for my 10-year-old, but and I'm sort of curious about one last kind of question to close. What about for, yes, we talked about adults and you can kind of create your own games, but what about for those older kids who it's like, okay, we've got, yes, I feel like for my 10 and under, we do a lot of cardboard boxes. We do a lot of coloring. We do a lot of, hey, go play in the basement. We're lucky we've got that, or go play outside with your friends. But what about for, those teenagers where you're like, what does unstructured play look like for teenagers?
Yeah, because you go play to a teenager, you never know what's going to happen there. So I feel like there's some different kind of social media type of groups that have cloned onto this, because it's so important. There's one called 10,000 hours, and it's basic, or 10,000, it's 10,000 hours outside. And there's all these activities to do outside. And some of these kids are preteen, teenagers, and mostly for those kids, because that's where it is, the outdoors, to be able to explore, because you could see that through so many lenses. Like Lee's saying, just a simple walk with this age group or my age group, we obviously could do different things. Ours is a nature walk. What can you find? What can you hunt for? What can you see? Jumping across ravines. But for teenagers, there are so many different things, like just to appreciate, be grateful for, and just get back to. And that's something simple that you can always count on, is the outdoors, a simple hike, a waterfall, somewhere different. But I think that's where they start, that 10,000 hours outdoors. And it's a really powerful social media outlet where people are posting pictures of their kids doing different things and also explaining the research behind it, which I think is really meaningful for a brain like mine. Like the why of it is powerful. So I think those are great places to start. This book that we're reading, Balanced and Barefoot, gives lots of hints and ideas. These kids, we went over during the summer at the place of in Scotland. This was a guy back in the States, but he had a group of teens that were using photography. And as they were out in nature, they were taking pictures of things and coming back and writing stories about them. But their lenses were all different. Different kids were interested in different things, whereas one was taking pictures of bugs and things. Other people were taking things of up close bark. So I think getting in touch with nature, finding that calm, that inner space, that sometimes play can be like meditative in practice, like a yoga or mindfulness wise. This play, for you tell littles to go play, and it's an activity, an active thing, but sometimes play can be very quiet and therapeutic. So I think it's important as they grow that play may look different, possibly, but it's the definition of play that brings you joy and it may be solitary, maybe by yourself, but it brings you joy and you feel unencumbered by anything else. It's something that is personal, I feel like, for teenagers especially.
Well, and my husband is actually an art teacher in the high school, and he recently took a group to Oregon, and a photography teacher was there, and the photography teacher had come up just with a list of different things to photograph in nature. And he said that these high schoolers that he was working with, like, it was such a play experience for them, searching and finding things and taking photographs of them, because sometimes like that language of play changes as you get older. But then how they started like manipulating and interacting with the environment and with each other with just those little cues.
Wow. I love that, you guys. That is what a perfect way to end. I feel like I've got from birth until when my kids leave my house. I'm like, we're going to national parks, we're getting phones, we're going to go, take some pictures and get outside together. So, y'all, I just thank you so much for your time and for sharing your expertise with us. You are outstanding, and we're so, so thankful that you joined us today.
Well, thank you so much for your support and getting on here, because I know you all have busy lives too, but now we're all advocates of play, right? So not only do we do it in our own lives, but we got to get these middle school and high school teachers to jump on board. We've got some and a few, but we need to continue to advocate, because it needs to be a school-wide policy to thread this throughout our curriculum.
Awesome.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks so much for being here, y'all. See y'all later.
Thanks.
Everybody, thank you for being here. We'll send out a recording afterwards. Bye.